The parking lot behind Tanner's Roadhouse smelled like diesel and rained on asphalt, and it was completely empty except for the row of Harleys lined up along the chain-link fence, and the small pair of sneakers visible beneath the rear axle of the last bike in the row. The sneakers were filthy. Canvas, once white, now the color of a highway shoulder. They were not moving. Decker Voss noticed them at 11 minutes past 9 on a Tuesday night in late October when he walked out the back door of Tanner's with a fresh pack of cigarettes and the specific, bone-deep weariness of a man who had been riding since dawn. He was 6'3", 260 pounds, with a silver-streaked beard that reached his collarbone and a leather cut that bore the death's head rocker of the Iron Covenant MC above the words Road Captain in faded block letters across his chest. He had 26 years of road behind him, scars on both forearms he never explained, and eyes that had long since stopped registering surprise at anything the world put in front of him. The sneakers made him stop. He crouched. Not quickly, not with alarm, but with the deliberate economy of a man who had learned that sudden movements solved nothing. The space under the truck was dark, lit only by the amber bleed of the parking lot's single functioning lamp. Tucked behind the rear differential, pressed flat against the oil-stained concrete, was a boy. He looked to be 7 or 8 years old. Dark hair, sharp cheekbones, a split lip that had dried into a crust of dark rust along the lower left edge. His eyes were open. He was staring at Decker with the absolute stillness of something that has learned that stillness is the only shield it has. "Hey," Decker said. His voice came out lower than he intended, stripped of everything but plain fact. The boy did not move. "You're going to be cold down there," Decker said. "October cold is different from September cold. Goes into the concrete." Still nothing. But the boy's eyes tracked him without blinking, and that was enough. The completely broken one stopped tracking. Decker sat down on the asphalt beside his truck, put his back against the rear tire, and lit his cigarette. He didn't reach under. He didn't call anyone over. He just sat and smoked, and let the silence do what silence does when you give it room. It took 4 minutes. Then a small voice came from under the differential. "Is that your truck?" "It is." "I wasn't hurting it." "I can see that." A pause. The October wind moved along the back fence and rattled the chain link, and the boy flinched at the sound before he could stop himself. Decker noticed but said nothing. "There's a man," the boy said finally. "What kind of man?" The sneakers shifted. The boy was thinking about how much to say. Decker recognized that calculation. He had seen it in adults twice this child's age, and it never got easier to witness. "A bad kind," the boy said. Decker took a long drag, let the smoke out slowly into the cold air. "Where's your mama?" "Inside." A beat. "She works here. Nights." The picture came together fast, the way pictures always did, when you had been sitting in enough back rooms of enough roadhouses for enough years. The boy had been waiting on his mother, or had been sent outside, or had run from something specific. The split lip was 3 or 4 hours old. The stillness under that truck was not new behavior. This was a child who had learned to hide. Decker ground the cigarette out against the sole of his boot and stood up. "I'm going to go inside and get your mama. You stay here. Nobody's going to touch this truck." The boy said nothing, but the sneakers pulled back another half-inch toward the center of the undercarriage. My name is Decker," the man said. "People around here know that name. You ask anyone inside?" He paused at the back door. "What's your name?" The pause was long enough that Decker thought he might not get an answer. "Marcus," the boy said. Decker went inside. The bar was medium loud, a Wednesday night crowd that had spilled over into Tuesday because the regional drag races had been rained out, and people had nowhere else to put themselves. 3 of Decker's brothers were at the table near the pool tables. Lenny Crow, who served as the charter's sergeant-at-arms, with his shaved head and the Iron Cross tattoo that ran from his left ear to his jaw. A younger member everyone called Skillet because of a run-in with a short-order cook in Fresno in 2019 that had become club legend, and a quieter man named Pruitt, mid-40s, who had once been a network systems engineer before a divorce and a bad year, had led him to a different kind of family. Pruitt still kept a laptop in his saddlebag and used it with a precision that the rest of the charter had learned not to question. Decker stopped beside Lenny's chair and bent down. "There's a kid under my truck. Split lip. Been out there a while. Says his mother works here." Lenny's expression did not change. His eyes did. "How old?" 7. Maybe 8. "Somebody with him when he came in?" "I don't know yet." Lenny stood. He was an inch shorter than Decker, but built like a quarry, and he moved with the contained stillness of someone who had absolute faith in his own capacity for response. The 2 of them crossed to the bar, where a woman in her mid-30s was running the tap with the economical speed of someone who had been doing this for years. Her name tag read April. She had the same dark hair as the boy under the truck, the same sharp cheekbones, and a bruise at the hinge of her jaw so fresh it was still more red than purple. Decker set his hands on the bar. "Your boy's outside," he said. "He's okay. He's under my truck." The color left April's face in a single wave. She set the pint glass down with a click that was too controlled, the way people set things down when their hands are shaking, but they refuse to let them. "He was supposed to stay in the back," she said, and the sentence carried everything she was trying not to say. "Who hit you?" Lenny said. Not a question. She shook her head once, quick and practiced. "He in here now?" The shake again. "He left 20 minutes ago, before Marcus ran out." Her voice dropped to the register of someone reciting facts into a void they don't expect to echo back. "He'll be back. He always comes back." "What's his name?" Decker said. She looked at him. She had the eyes of someone who had spent a long time doing the math on whether honesty cost more than silence. "Reeves," she said at last. "Garrett Reeves." The name hit Lenny's face without landing visibly, but Decker saw the half-second delay before the man nodded. They had both been in this county long enough to know that name. Garrett Reeves was not a private citizen in any simple sense. His family had owned the construction aggregate business that supplied the county for 3 generations, and his uncle was a sitting county commissioner, and his cousin sat on the city planning board, and the local police substation on Route 9 had received 2 separate donations from Reeves family charitable funds in the past 4 years. The name did not simply belong to a man, it belonged to a system. "You got somewhere to go," Lenny said. April's laugh was not a laugh. "Not that he doesn't know about." Decker straightened. He looked at Lenny for a moment, a specific look that contained a full conversation, compressed to silence. Then he walked back outside. Marcus was still under the truck in the same position, knees drawn up now against the cold. Decker crouched again, and this time he extended one hand, palm up, into the dark space beneath the differential. He did not move it. He just left it there. The boy looked at the hand for a long time. Then he placed his own in it. Decker helped him out from under the truck, and Marcus stood blinking in the amber light of the parking lot, with the particular dignity of a small person who has decided to stop hiding and has not yet decided what comes next. He was thin, fine-boned, wearing a jacket one size too small and jeans with a tear at the right knee. The split lip was worse in the light. Decker filed that observation away with the cold efficiency of a man who understood that some things required receipts. "Your mama's coming out," Decker said. Marcus looked at the back door. "She's okay," Decker said. "She works hard." Something passed across the boy's face at that, a softening that was almost too much to look at directly. The expression of a child who is not accustomed to hearing his mother described in terms of quality. The back door opened, and April came through it at a pace just under running. She crossed the parking lot and dropped to her knees in front of her son in the gravel and held him the way people hold on to things they almost lost. Marcus went rigid for a second, the reflex of the habitually braced, and then something in him let go and he pressed his face into her shoulder and held on. Decker stepped back and gave them the circle of distance that the moment required. He went back inside and sat down at the table with his brothers. "Pruitt," he said. Pruitt looked up. "Garrett Reeves. Construction aggregate family, county connections. I want to know everything he's been careful about." Pruitt closed the book he'd been reading, opened his laptop, and began to type with the focused calm of a man who genuinely enjoyed this kind of problem. He asked no questions. He had been in the room for the conversation at the bar. He did not need a brief. Skillet poured Decker a bourbon without being asked, and Decker drank half of it without tasting it. And the table was quiet except for the soft percussion of Pruitt's keystrokes and the ambient noise of the bar, and once the distant cough of the wind against the parking lot fence. It was Lenny who spoke first, and what he said was simple and final, the way things were when they came from Lenny. "He'll come back tonight. She said he always does." Decker nodded. "We'll be here when he does." The next 2 hours moved with the particular texture of waiting that Decker knew well, the kind where you are not passive, but not yet active, where everything is kinetic potential sitting still. April came back inside, and Tanner, the owner, a broad-shouldered man in his 60s who had operated this bar for 30 years and held opinions on human decency that were not philosophical but practical, let Marcus sit in the stockroom with a plate of fries and a glass of Coke, and strict instructions not to move. Tanner had a daughter roughly April's age and a granddaughter roughly Marcus's age, and these facts were not irrelevant to the quality of his hospitality that evening. He set the fries down in front of the boy without comment and put a hand briefly on the top of the stockroom doorframe on his way out, not looking back, and went back to his bar. Tanner knew the Iron Covenant the way a man knows his neighbors after a long time, not with warmth exactly, but with the specific respect that accrues between people who have each kept their word in difficult moments. Skillet went behind the bar and refilled April's water glass without being asked, and April drank it without looking at him, and this was the full extent of the exchange, and it was sufficient. Skillet was 24 years old and had not been in the charter long enough to have the scar tissue that the older members carried, the thing that made them economical. He still had the young man's instinct to do something when something was clearly wrong, and he had learned in the charter that doing something did not always mean speaking, and so he refilled the glass and left it and went back to the table. And this was a lesson he had been learning in increments across the 2 years of his membership, and had never learned faster than he learned it in that moment. April pulled 3 pints and ran 2 tabs and made change 4 separate times, and each time she finished a transaction, she rotated slightly, so that the bruise at the hinge of her jaw was turned away from the nearest customer, a small mechanical habit of concealment that she probably was not even conscious of performing anymore. It was Decker who noticed it from across the bar, and he sat with the noticing without doing anything with it, because some things required witnessing before they required acting, and this was not yet the moment for acting. Pruitt worked steadily through the 2 hours and did not look up until 11:47, when he set his hand flat on the table and said, "Okay." He had a specific quality during this kind of work, a contained intensity that made the space around him feel quieter than the rest of the bar. Skillet had once tried to look over his shoulder during a research session, and Lenny had redirected him with a single low word, not harshly, the way you redirect a dog near a working tool. Since then, everyone at the table gave Pruitt the radius he required and waited for the radius to expand on its own terms. He turned the laptop so Decker and Lenny could see. The document open on the screen was a county contract for road resurfacing awarded the previous spring to Reeves Aggregate through a process that the paperwork described as competitive, and that the paperwork, if you knew what to look at, revealed was not. The bid comparison had been submitted 2 days before the competing bids were received. The date discrepancy was 11 days. It was the kind of mistake that only happens when a man is confident no one will look, and this man had been confident of that his entire adult life. Beside the contract was a second document, a restraining order application filed 14 months earlier by a woman named April Conroe, withdrawn 3 weeks after filing. The withdrawal notes cited a change in circumstances. Pruitt had found the original affidavit, the one April had submitted before the withdrawal, and the language in it was precise and detailed and ugly. Beside that was a photograph, time-stamped from the urgent care clinic where April had been treated 11 months ago, a record that belonged to April and that Pruitt had accessed through channels that Lenny did not ask about and Decker did not need explained. The third item was an email chain. It was between Garrett Reeves and a deputy with the county sheriff's department, a man named Hollis, and it had been sent from a personal account that Reeves used when he was being friendly with people he considered beneath him. The kind of account a person keeps when they believe their name alone is firewall enough. The emails did not contain anything explicit. They contained something more useful, a pattern, the response times, the casual first names, the shared language of men who understood each other's positions in a system they both benefited from. Decker read everything twice. Then he looked at Pruitt. "Can this be packaged?" he said. "Already is," Pruitt said. He lifted a thumb drive from beside the laptop and set it on the table. "Copies?" 3. 1 secure upload, 1 drive, 1 print copy in the side pocket of my bag. Pruitt settled back in his chair. "The County Contracts Board has an anonymous tip mechanism. So does the state AG's office. And there's a journalist at the Valley Register who has been trying to get traction on county procurement irregularities for 8 months. She'll know what she's looking at." Decker sat for a moment with the thumb drive in his hand. It was lighter than it had any right to be for what it contained. He set it down and finished the other half of his bourbon. "Not tonight," Lenny said. That was all he said. It meant the journalist and the AG and the Contracts Board were not tonight's business. Tonight's business was something else. At 12:23 in the morning, headlights swept across the front windows of Tanner's Roadhouse. April, who had been refilling the condiment stations with the concentration that was clearly not about condiments, went still. The headlights did not belong to the Iron Covenant's Harleys, which were still lined up in the back lot. They belonged to a black pickup truck with a lifted suspension and a county contractor's placard in the rear window, and it pulled into the front lot and sat for a moment with its engine running before the engine died. Decker was already at the front window. Lenny was already at the door. Garrett Reeves was 39 years old and looked the part he had been cast in since birth. 6'1", broad shoulders that suggested a former athlete who had aged into the kind of solidity that money mistakes for authority. He wore a canvas work jacket over a collared shirt, the specific uniform of a man who wanted to be seen as working class, but had never been. He pushed through the front door of Tanner's with the familiarity of someone who had never been told he couldn't, and his eyes found April behind the bar with the directness of ownership. He did not immediately notice the 12 people in the bar who had stopped whatever they were doing. April's chin went up. That was the only thing that moved in her face. Her chin went up, and her hands settled flat on the bar, and she did not step back. Reeves crossed the floor toward her. He got about halfway before he registered Lenny Crow standing to his right, and then he registered Decker Voss standing to his left, and then he registered that the bar, which had been filled with the ordinary noise of a late Tuesday night, was completely silent. He stopped. He was good at reading rooms. Men who have spent their lives relying on the permission of context are always good at reading rooms. And this room was telling him something that his face did not want to receive. "I'm just here to talk to April," he said. The register was friendly. The friendliness was a tool. Decker said nothing. Lenny said nothing. Reeves's eyes moved around the bar. The Iron Covenant members, 8 of them now, were positioned with the casual specificity of people who have done this before. They were not aggressive. They were not displaying anything that could be named as threatening by any legal definition. They were simply present, occupying space in the way that a cliff face occupies space, in the way that a wall occupies space, which is to say completely, without apology, with no apparent interest in moving. "I don't know what she told you," Reeves said. The friendliness was fraying at the edges now. "You can go," Decker said. "Right now, tonight, you get in your truck and you go. And you don't come back to this bar." Reeves looked at him. He was doing math. He was calculating the distance between the authority he had exercised his entire life and the authority available to him right now in this specific room at 12:26 in the morning, and the calculation was not coming out the way he was accustomed to. "You don't have any standing here," Reeves said. "You don't know the situation." "I know enough," Decker said. "She's not your problem to solve." "She's not a problem," Decker said. The correction was flat and patient, the way you correct someone who has made an error of fact rather than an error of judgment. "She's a woman doing her job. Her kid is in the back, and you're going to leave." Reeves's jaw tightened. The friendly register was gone now. What was underneath it was the thing that had been underneath it all along, the thing that the money and the connections and the county placard in the truck window had kept covered for 39 years, which was the simple, bottomless rage of a man who had never once been told no by anyone who could make it stick. "You have no idea who you're talking to," he said. "Garrett Reeves," Decker said. "Reeves Aggregate, 3rd generation. County procurement contracts, including the Route 14 resurfacing job awarded this April, which you submitted the comparison bid for 11 days before the competing bids came in. Your uncle is Gerald Reeves, County Commission, District 4. Your cousin is on the planning board. Deputy Hollis at the Route 9 substation has been your friend since high school." The blood left Reeves's face with the speed and totality of a man who has just understood that the room he walked into is not the room he thought it was. "That's a matter of public record," he said, but his voice had changed. It had lost its shape. "Most of it," Decker agreed. "Pruitt." Pruitt appeared from the back hallway with his laptop open and turned it toward the bar. The email chain was on the screen, the one from the personal account, the one that showed the shape of a relationship between a man with contracts to award and a man with a badge. Reeves stared at the screen. The bar was so quiet that when Tanner set down a glass on the other side of the room, everyone heard it. "There's a copy of everything on a drive," Decker said. "County Contracts Board, State AG's office. A journalist at the Valley Register who has been working the procurement beat for the better part of a year." He paused. "That's the version that moves if you walk through that door again. Tonight, you walk out. This copy stays where it is." Reeves's eyes moved to April. She was still behind the bar, her hands still flat on the surface, her chin still up. She looked at him with an expression that was not triumph and not fear. It was something older and stiller than either of those things. It was the expression of a person who has stopped expecting rescue and is watching an unexpected thing happen and has not yet decided how to hold it. "April," Reeves said. His voice had dropped to something almost private. She said nothing. "We can talk about this. All of this we can." She said nothing. Decker took one step forward. Not fast. Not aggressive. One deliberate step that covered the specific geography of the bar floor and placed him between Garrett Reeves and the woman behind the bar with a finality that was not physical but was absolute. Reeves looked at him for a long moment. Then he looked at the room. Then something in him, some load-bearing wall of the self that had been standing since the day he was born into the right family in the right county, gave way. It did not fall loudly. It folded inward the way certain structures do, collapsing into their own footprint without drama, leaving only a diminished version of the shape that had been there before. He turned and walked to the door. He pushed through it without looking back, and the parking lot took him, and the black truck's engine turned over, and the headlights came on, and then both were gone. The bar was still quiet for a moment. Then Tanner cracked his knuckles behind the counter and said, "Drinks are on me, and the room exhaled. Skillet laughed, short and relieved, the release of a young man who had been holding himself very still for 2 hours. Nobody else laughed, but the quality of the silence changed, shifted from the held breath of readiness to the open breath of something concluded. Lenny walked to the back hallway, and a moment later returned with Marcus, who was carrying his own empty Coke glass with the careful gravity of a child returning borrowed property. The boy stood at the edge of the bar floor and looked at his mother, and April came around from behind the counter and crouched and said something to him that no one else heard, and he nodded once, and the two of them stood together near the end of the bar for the remainder of the night. The Iron Covenant brothers settled back into the bar's ordinary rhythm the way water settles after a stone has been thrown. The pool table resumed. 2 conversations restarted. Tanner poured a row of drinks along the bar with the methodical generosity of a man honoring a commitment, and the glasses went down in front of whoever was sitting there. Decker took the last one and sat with it for a moment, not drinking yet, looking at the front door and the parking lot visible through its small square window, the empty lot and the absent truck and the absence of what the truck had carried. He drank. What happened in the 48 hours that followed was the kind of thing that does not announce itself while it is happening. Pruitt filed the tip through the County Contracts Board's anonymous portal at 9 the following morning, using a connection that bounced through 3 separate nodes and resolved to an IP address that belonged to a hospice facility in the Central Valley with open public Wi-Fi. The Valley Register journalist, a woman named Dana Ostrander, who had been accumulating documents in a folder on her secure drive for the better part of a year, received a call from an unknown number and found a package in her mailbox containing a printed summary and a thumb drive with the same information. She had been waiting for a source willing to put something on paper. And the package in her mailbox was not exactly that, but it was something closer to it than anything she had been given before. She published a first piece 36 hours later. It was measured and specific and cited the documents by date and reference number. And it asked a narrow set of questions to which the County Contracts Board had no narrow answers. The story was picked up by the Regional Wire the same afternoon. By the following morning, it had traveled in the specific way that stories travel when they confirm something people already believed about systems they already distrusted. Gerald Reeves released a statement calling the reporting incomplete. His office released a second statement the following day acknowledging a review process had been initiated. Deputy Hollis requested administrative leave pending an internal affairs inquiry that the sheriff's office had not announced publicly, but that Dana Ostrander had already confirmed through a source she declined to name. Garrett Reeves did not return to Tanner's Roadhouse. He did not contact April. Whether this was because of the legal exposure or because of something else that had shifted in the architecture of his certainty, nobody at the bar speculated. The fact of his absence was sufficient. April changed her shifts to days for 2 weeks and then switched back to nights when she was ready. And the particular mechanical rotation of her shoulder that had concealed the bruise gradually stopped occurring, and one Friday she stood at the bar and laughed at something Tanner said. A genuine laugh with her full face in it. And it was the first time the people who worked that shift had heard that sound from her, and they did not comment on it, which was the correct response, and each of them knew it. Marcus did not know any of this. He was 8 years old, and the adult world was opaque to him in the ways that the adult world is always opaque to children. A series of inexplicable weather events that either threatened you or did not. What he knew was that the man with the silver beard had been there the night his lip was hurting and his mother's face was wrong, and that afterward the man had not been there, which was how the man had always been around, appearing when something needed appearing, and then receding into the larger machinery of the world. He did not ask his mother about it. His mother had a quality in those days of someone who is learning to stand differently inside her own life, carefully, the way you stand after a long time of holding yourself in a posture that was never natural. Marcus watched her learn this with the precise attention of a child who has been watching his mother for early signs of weather his whole life, and what he saw was not rain. He asked Tanner about the bikers one afternoon, 3 weeks after that Tuesday night, when Tanner let him sweep the back of the bar in exchange for a Coke and fries, which had become their standing arrangement. "The ones with the jackets," Marcus said. "With the faces on the back." Tanner considered this from behind the bar. He had the considered quality of a man who chose words the way you choose tools, by what the job actually required. "They're called cuts," Tanner said. "The jackets. The face is the death's head." "What does that mean?" "It means they've made a commitment," Tanner said, "to each other." Marcus processed this for a moment, moving the broom in slow arcs across the floor. "The big one," he said, "with the beard. He talked to me under the truck." "Decker, Tanner said. "Is he going to come back?" Tanner looked at the boy for a moment with the unhurried assessment of someone who had operated a bar for 30 years and had learned to read what people were actually asking when they asked what they were asking. "They have a run-through here most Tuesdays," he said. "Give or take." Marcus nodded and kept sweeping. The following Tuesday, at 9:15 in the evening, a sound came from the parking lot. It was the specific, layered sound of multiple motorcycle engines decelerating from road speed. The kind of sound that has its own pressure and weight that you feel in your sternum before you process it through your ears. It rolled across the parking lot of Tanner's Roadhouse like a wave, and everyone inside heard it. And the people who had been there 3 weeks earlier and the people who had not been there 3 weeks earlier both looked toward the front windows at the same moment. The Harleys came into the lot in their formation, engines burning low, headlights cutting the October dark in 2 parallel rows that wavered and held. There were 14 of them this time. They pulled into the spaces along the chain-link fence and cut their engines one by one, and the silence that followed was immense and clean and full of its own specific gravity. Decker Voss swung off his bike and stretched his back with the characteristic economy of a man who has spent long hours in the saddle, and he looked at the bar front, and the bar front looked back at him through its windows. Marcus was standing by the bar with his broom. His mother was watching him from behind the counter. The boy set the broom against the wall and walked to the front door and pushed it open and went outside. Decker saw him coming and waited. He unzipped the front pocket of his cut and removed something and held it at his side. Marcus came to a stop 3 feet away, and the two of them regarded each other in the parking lot light, the man and the boy, with the quiet quality of a conversation that had been happening across the 3 weeks since they had last spoken and was only now finding words. Decker crouched, bringing himself to the boy's level, and he held out what he had been holding. It was a small iron keychain, no longer than 2 inches, shaped into a rough circle with a simple design pressed into the metal, not the death's head, but a road, 2 lines converging at a horizon, the specific image of going somewhere. "That's a road captain's marker," Decker said. "It means the person carrying it has safe passage." Marcus looked at it. "Safe passage where?" "Anywhere on our road," Decker said. The boy reached out and took the keychain. He turned it over in his palm, feeling the weight of it, the particular coldness of iron that has been carried in a pocket and has taken on a little of the body's warmth. He looked at it for a long time, and then he closed his hand around it. "Thank you," Marcus said. Decker nodded and stood back up. He looked at the bar door, where April was standing in the frame with a dish towel over her shoulder, watching her son in the parking lot with the expression of a woman who is adding up the events of the past weeks and arriving at an accounting she did not expect, one that did not balance in the way she was accustomed to the world balancing, which was to say it came out in her favor. Decker gave her a nod. She returned it. Behind him, the Iron Covenant brothers were climbing off their bikes and moving toward the bar entrance with the easy confidence of men who know they're welcome, and the November air smelled like engine exhaust and cold, and something underneath both of those things that was harder to name, a quality of the evening, perhaps, or of this particular Tuesday, that felt different from ordinary Tuesday evenings in a way that was not about the temperature or the light. Marcus walked back inside ahead of them. He went behind the bar to where his mother was, and she put her hand briefly on the back of his head as he passed. The way you touch something you have almost lost and then recovered, feeling for the solid reality of it. He put the keychain in his jeans pocket. He picked up his broom. The bar filled with the sound of men arriving after a long ride, the specific warm noise of boots on wood floors and voices dropping into the lower register of people relaxing. And April began to pour, and Tanner turned the music up one notch, and the evening settled into itself like something finding its right shape at last. Marcus swept the floor in slow arcs, and the iron keychain was a small, cold weight in his pocket, and the windows of Tanner's Roadhouse pushed yellow light out into the November dark, and out on the lot, 14 Harleys stood in their row against the chain-link fence, chrome catching the parking lot lamp, quiet now and patient, the way things are quiet and patient when they have arrived where they belong. This story is the kind that doesn't get told on the evening news, because the evening news doesn't know which parking lots to look in. But it gets told in bars and in break rooms and in texts between people who were there and people who weren't, and it travels the way the true ones always do, by word of mouth, one voice to the next, gathering weight as it goes. If it found you where you needed it, share it. And if you know someone who needs reminding that protection can come from unexpected places, send it to them.